Hello again, Dave Graybill, FishingMagician.com. I've got a great show coming up today. I'll be fishing with Joe Zellinski of Golden Chrome Guide Service. We're going to be on Banks Lake fishing for walleye. I'm looking forward to fishing with Joe. Known him for years, and this has been our first opportunity to get out on the water. I hope to be able to share what he's learned about fishing for walleye here on Banks Lake. I want to give a shout out to Bob File Boats and Motors. They've been keeping me on the water for over 14 years with quality boats from Bob File Boats and Motors. Well, Joe's getting us set up for some crankbait fishing here on Banks Lake, and he was showing me the style of planers that he uses. These are made by, who originally made these?
These are Sidewinder planer boards.
They're the Sidewinders, but they've been altered and modified.
Yeah, so normally you run the line through it like a slip bobber almost. And then there's a little slot here with a piece of rubber. And what you do is you run your line through it and you feed your bait back. And then you take the line from here and you put it into that slot. Well, the only thing, it makes it hard to send your baits out because you got to do it by hand all the time. But if you modify it like this, you can let your bait out and then clip it on here on the back and then clip it on here on the front. And then this works just like a downrigger. This is a downrigger release. So when you get a fish, you just pop it loose out of here and then the board slides back down to your swivel. And then you can just reel your fish in. It works pretty slick.
And what I like about this style of planer is you don't have to reel the planer up, unhook it while you've still got a fish on there.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you say, that just slides down your line and you just play your fish and bring them in. There's no tension because it's just hanging in the water.
Yeah, and it also allows you to, like, we'll run a couple rods out each side of the boat, and if it's the outside pole that gets bit, it allows you to leave the inside pole where it's at. And then this releases and you just reel real slow and the fish will swing behind and around the inside pole and you can bring it back up straight behind the boat without having to move other rods.
That's pretty
some of the
slick.
other planers, they might work a little better, especially in waves. These don't do very good in big waves, but they do okay if you go with the wind. But you have to either let the other boards way back and then move those rods over the top, or you have to get them out of the way, clear them before you bring in a fish in from the outside. So this works pretty good for me.
It's a great system. Well, we've got the rigs out, the planers are bobbing along, and
We got something going on here already.
and we just got a planer getting a bite, so we're gonna have to check that.
All right. So yeah, I got a couple flicker minnows, Berkeley flicker minnows here, and a couple Berkeley flicker shads. Early in the season, I like kind of the smaller ones. Like this one's a size 5 flicker minnow, a size 7, and then size 5 flicker shads. And then as you get later in the season, the fish get a little deeper. You can go to size 7s in the shads and 7s, 9s, and 11s for the flicker minnows. A couple of my fish catching colors. You can see the teeth marks on that one. Of course, anything perchy looking is going to work for walleye, fire tiger. And then a lot of silvers out here on Banks Lake too.
Well, that's great. Now, do you are you changing the size of your lures with the depth that you're fishing?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, early in the spring here, you might be fishing depending on like here or Moses Lake or Potholes, anywhere from just a few feet deep, 3, 4, 5 foot out to say 20. And the size 5 seem to work really well in the springtime. And then I just run a back as far as like, obviously if you're only in 3 or 4 or 5 feet of water, you're only running a few feet behind your planer board or whatever. Maybe 5 foot, 10, 15 feet. Other than that, like in here where we're at, there's weed growth and stuff, so you try to run them through the weed tips. So a lot of times I'm only running them 20 to 30 feet back, maybe 50 feet back. And then when you get out more open water, like out in the middle of Banks Lake, run them 100 feet back, you'll get them size 5s, size 7s a lot. And then later in the summer into the fall, you can use the bigger size flicker minnows. Run those 100 or 150 feet back, and you can get out 25 feet or so. Yeah.
All right, that's great. Then I notice you have an endless variety of colors, always experimenting.
Yeah. Pretty much almost all the colors they make. I know there's some I don't have, which, you know, I want them all, but I still go back to my same handful of colors that always work. But sometimes you let people, you know, bring people fishing on your boat that don't fish a lot. You ask them to pick out a nice, pretty one that they like, and it gets you to use colors you don't normally use. So it's a good thing to do, is ask people which ones they like and try them out. You never know unless you try them all. Ever the second one I've ever got.
We were talking earlier at the ramp how few largemouth we've caught over the years, and here Joe gets the second one he's ever caught, pulling a crankbait. It's not unusual to hook bass while we're doing this. Those smallmouth particularly love those plugs, and so it's not unusual to hook a bass while you're side planing. How about
10,
that?
12 incher?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're after, huh? Now that is a nice example of a Banks Lake walleye. Just a nice color. And man, he whacked that flicker shad. There's no doubt about it, when they hit those planers, they jump back, and that's a very nice fish, Joe.
Yeah, good way to start.
That's a good way to start. Very good. Good
20,
job.
21.
Yeah. Well, Joe, you've shown me that side planting can be very effective way to catch walleye. And I think you said that you're almost doing this exclusively now, that side planting can work all season long. If somebody wanted to get started in the side planing mode and use that as a technique, what would be some good advice for someone that's just starting to use side planers?
Well, I guess the first thing is, you know, deciding which kind of side planers you want. Like we're running the sidewinders today. That works good for me because when you get a fish, you can pop the side planer loose and it slides down the line. You can just reel the fish in without having to reel up the board, take the board off, and then finish reeling in the fish. The way I run my setup, the one thing you have to kind of be careful of is, like, if you're reeling in an outside rod to check it for weeds, or just check it, or you have a fish on, you want to pop it loose, but you don't want to reel it in too fast. If you reel it in too fast, it'll catch the inside line. So you got to let it kind of reel slow, just keep a little tension on it, and let it swing back behind your inside rods, and then bring it back up in the middle behind the boat. That's probably the biggest thing. Because if you reel it in too fast, then you end up with a big tangle. And it can be kind of a mess to get undone. Sometimes you have to cut your line or whatever to get it out. And then the other thing is be really cognizant indication of like that your baits are working right. Sometimes you have to pick it up and you can still kind of feel the vibration of the crankbait working back there. Because if you get weeds, or sometimes you'll get little perch on there and they'll drag your bait up to the surface. And then when you try to reel in another one, it'll tangle and stuff. And besides that, you want your baits working so you can actually catch fish. So, if you notice something different, maybe the rod or the planer cord is pulling back funny, you might want to check it, make sure there's not something little on there or a weed hanging on there or something. Oh, and then spacing. So today we're not really, our setbacks behind the planer are only going about 30 feet or so. So you can keep the planers relatively close together. If you're back 100 feet behind the planer, then you want to space them out further. For the same reason, if they get too close, then you can get entangled. But if you have them far apart, then you have more space to work with. Which, you know, in small spaces like we're in the punch bowl today, if there's a bunch of boats in here, you kind of have to keep everything tighter if you're able to do it at all. Down the main lake, you can spread them out pretty good. And then if you go by a boat that's pretty close, you might have to reel them up kind of close to the boat and work around people and stuff. Or sometimes you just have to bring them in momentarily while you get through traffic or whatever, and then go back out. But like a place like Banks is a pretty big lake, so you got room to spread out for the most part. Yeah. Oh, and another thing, I always run, when I'm running cranks, I run planers on all the rods. Some people run the back ones just flatline with the plug straight out the back, which works, and it's fine to do. But then when you get a fish on another rod, you just got to move rods out of the way or reel those ones up real quick. This way has worked pretty good because I got a wider swath of water at the back of the boat here between these two back ones. So it gives you room to bring the fish up behind the boat. Then, you know, netting them right off the back of the boat. So.
How about speed?
I like around 1.7. I'll set my bow mount motor on cruise control at 1.7 and kind of start from there. And it just seems to always work for me. But you can go up to 2.5. I've even heard up to 3 miles an hour. That seems like you're cooking pretty good. But yeah, around that 2 mile an hour, 1.7. Sometimes even slower, 1.4, 1.5. Just kind of depends on the day.
Well, that's great, you know, and today we've had to deal with everything from heavy gusts to almost calm, but as you say, you know, you have that on cruise control and that speed seems to be working great.
Yeah, and then I use my kicker for kind of thrust, because if you run at those speeds on your bow mount all day, you only last a couple hours in your batteries with it. Use the kicker for thrust and a little extra power. Sometimes you can kind of tweak the RPMs on your kicker to get a little extra speed. And then use the bow mount for steering.
Whoop. Well, we got to get busy. Well, Joe, thanks so much. It's been a great morning here on Banks Lake. I really appreciate you taking the time showing people the finer points of side planing. Obviously, a very effective method for catching a walleye, not just on Banks, but other reservoirs here that are known for good walleye fishing.
Yep.
And I understand that's pretty much what you do now. In terms of when you go out walleye fishing, you're going to be running side planers.
Yeah, most of the time now. I don't think I've touched a night crawler in probably a couple years. I generally wait till sometime in May to really get it going. But once the crankbait gets going, it's usually can stay pretty good all through the spring, summer, and into the fall, almost all year.
That's tremendous. You know, one of the things too that I know that I think one of the first times that I saw you coming into the cleaning station at Northrop, you were actually fishing in 35 feet of water, but your baits were only down about 12?
Yeah, 12 to 15 feet down over, sometimes, 30, 40, 50 feet of water sometimes. It just kind of depends. A lot of times you're trying to hold, that 15 to 20 foot contour, but sometimes the fish are out there in the
and they're
deep
suspended.
water. Yeah.
And that's something that I don't experience because I'm bottom bouncing. And I know that that opens another realm of possibility for people that are out fishing on banks in different conditions and different water depths, is you can still be a very effective side planing over water that's very deep, but as you say, your baits are only maybe 12 to 15 feet deep. Another thing that I thought was important that you brought up was the fact if you get something on your outside rod, just to let that slide back, get behind your inside rod so you can bring it up behind the motor and land it from the back of the boat. Then you don't have to move anything around or reel anything in. I thought that was a really good tip.
Yeah, it generally works pretty good. And the key to that too is making sure all your setbacks are the same. If they're different, you want the longer ones on the outside, shorter ones on the inside, and all your baits the same. And if they're different, then the deeper ones on the inside and the shallower ones on the outside. Or other little tricks you can do too. But if you keep everything the same, you should be pretty good.
That's great. Well, this was a great morning. We got some beautiful fish in the live well. If someone wanted to have the same kind of great experience we had this morning, how would they get a hold of you to book a trip?
The easy place to go is my website. It's www.goldenchromefishing.com. That's GOLDN fishing.com. Or give me a text or a call at 509-881-7224.
Thanks again, Joe. We both looked at the forecast. We were this close to canceling today, and I'm sure glad you decided to take the time and come up here and meet me.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, it's getting a little nautical out there now. But,
yeah, it is. But we got the best part of the morning, and we got the fish to prove it.
Yep.
Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you.